I never thought love could sell me. It was 2:14 a.m. when I sat on the kitchen floor of our apartment in Atlanta, recording a voice note I never planned to send. My voice trembled as I whispered, "If anything happens to me, tell my mom that Ethan sold me for a promotion." The words tasted like poison. Just hours earlier, my husband, the man I built my whole world around, had asked me to do something small for his career. "Baby, it's just one night," he'd said, eyes darting away. "Dinner with my boss, a little flirt maybe, nothing serious. You know how these corporate games go." I wanted to scream. 4 years, we'd chased the American dream together, working 2 jobs, skipping holidays, believing love was our safety net. But that night, I realized my husband was willing to trade me for a title. The city lights outside our window blinked like judgment. I sat there, numb, wondering how the man who once swore to protect me could now be the one selling my dignity for success. That was the night I learned, betrayal doesn't always wear a stranger's face. Sometimes it sleeps right next to you. "My name is Emily Carter," I whispered, voice breaking. "If anything happens to me, please tell my mother that Ryan sold me for a promotion." The words sounded foreign coming out of my mouth, like something from a bad movie. But it was my life now. I hit stop, then play, and listened to my own confession in disbelief. That was when I finally accepted that love, the kind I thought could survive anything, had died quietly in our apartment tonight. 6 years earlier, we had stood in a small chapel in Savannah, hands shaking, promising forever with nothing but $50 in our bank account and more hope than sense. Ryan used to make me laugh until I cried. He used to dance with me barefoot in the kitchen while pasta boiled over. We moved to Atlanta 2 years later, chasing a better life, new jobs, new dreams, and a chance to finally breathe after years of scraping by. I remember our first night in this apartment. The floorboards creaked, the heater hissed, and the city lights glittered like promises outside the window. We slept on a mattress without a frame, holding each other and talking about everything we'd build together, a home, a family, a future. Ryan was ambitious but gentle, always saying, "Baby, we'll make it. I just need a little more time." But time changes people. Success changes them faster. It started small extra hours at the office, late-night calls with his new boss, Mr. Wallace, the regional director at his firm. Ryan would come home smelling of stress and expensive cologne, his tie loosened, eyes heavy but burning with determination. He'd tell me about deals, numbers, bonuses, the next big step. I was proud of him until I noticed that our conversations had become one-sided. I'd ask about dinner, he'd talk about deadlines. I'd tell him about my day teaching at the community college, he'd scroll through his emails. The laughter we once shared began to sound forced, like we were acting out the memory of our marriage. Then came the company's restructuring. Only one promotion slot left. Ryan wanted it desperately. We needed it too, the student loans, the car payment, the savings account that barely survived each month. Every night he'd pace the living room muttering about politics at work, about Mr. Wallace, a man who smiled too much and looked at me too long whenever I attended company events. I never liked Wallace. Something about the way his eyes lingered made my skin crawl. Once, at a Christmas party, he told me, "Your husband is a lucky man, Emily." The way he said it made me feel like a prize, not a person. Ryan laughed awkwardly and brushed it off. I let it go, because that's what wives do when they want peace. A week ago, Ryan started coming home later than usual. He'd smell of whiskey and tension. When I asked, he'd sigh and say, "You wouldn't understand, Em. It's just work politics." But tonight was different. He came in around 10, face pale, jaw tight. He didn't kiss me hello. He just stood there, hands in pockets, like someone rehearsing bad news. "Emily," he began, eyes darting everywhere but at me. "There's something I need to ask you. And I need you to trust me on this." The words made my stomach tighten. "Okay," I said cautiously. He swallowed hard. "Mr. Wallace, he likes you. He thinks you're smart, sophisticated. He invited us to dinner this Friday." I frowned. "Okay, dinner's fine." He hesitated. "He wants to talk to you. Privately." "Privately?" Ryan nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, baby, this could really help me." He's the one who decides the promotion. He said he just wants to get to know you better. It's part of the game. I felt heat rise to my face. The game? What game are we playing, Ryan? He sighed, frustrated. Don't be naive, Em. Everyone does favors in corporate America. You think those wives just sit at home? They help their husbands when it matters. Help? I whispered, not sure I wanted him to explain. He finally looked me in the eyes. It's just dinner. Maybe drinks. Be nice to him. If you have to flirt a little, just play along. You know I'd never ask you to do something that'll hurt you. Silence filled the room. I could hear my heartbeat louder than the ticking clock on the wall. You're asking me to sell myself, Ryan, I said quietly. It's not like that, he snapped. You don't understand what's at stake. This promotion changes everything. We could finally buy that house. You could quit your second job. One night, Emily. One night could fix our whole future. I stared at the man I once thought I knew. His words didn't sound desperate anymore, they sounded rehearsed, like he'd already justified the sin in his head. Does he know you're offering me? I asked. Ryan looked away. He just hinted, that's all. He said he admires you. I thought maybe if he saw how amazing you are. I laughed bitterly, tears already forming. You thought if I let him touch me, he'd promote you. Don't twist it, he said through clenched teeth. You're being dramatic. No, Ryan, I whispered, backing away, I'm being awake. I went to the bedroom, locked the door, and slid down against it, shaking. The man on the other side, the one who once promised to cherish me, had turned me into currency. Hours later, he knocked softly, saying my name. I didn't answer. I could smell his cologne through the door, that same scent that used to mean safety, now suffocating me. When I finally opened it, he was asleep on the couch, still in his work clothes. I stood there watching him breathe, wondering when love had turned into leverage. That's when I walked back to the kitchen, picked up my phone, and pressed record. Because if a woman's worth can be sold for a promotion, the least she can do is leave evidence of the transaction. I stared at the red light blinking on the screen and whispered the truth into the silence, not to expose him yet, but to remind myself that I wasn't crazy, that this was real, that my pain had a witness. And as the night stretched toward dawn, I realized something I'd never dared to say aloud. Betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it wears your wedding ring. Morning came too soon. I hadn't slept. When the first light slipped through the blinds, it found me still sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. Ryan was already up, pretending everything was normal, frying eggs, humming softly, acting like the night before had never happened. Morning, Em, he said, forcing a smile. You want coffee? I studied him for a moment. The man I fell in love with used to make me feel safe just by saying my name. Now his voice made my stomach twist. No coffee, I said quietly. We need to talk. He froze, spatula mid-air. About what? Last night. He sighed, setting the pan aside. Emily, I was tired. Maybe I didn't explain myself right. It's just dinner, that's all. Ryan, I said, standing up, you asked me to entertain your boss. That's not dinner. That's prostitution disguised as ambition. His face tightened. God, you make everything sound so dramatic. I make it sound honest, I snapped. You're asking me to sell my dignity for your promotion. He turned away, rubbing his temples. You don't understand how this world works. It's cutthroat, Em. Wallace runs everything. If I don't do what it takes, I'll lose everything I've worked for. Then lose it, I said. Because if this is what it takes, maybe it isn't worth keeping. He spun around, his voice rising. You think it's that simple? You think I can just walk away from years of sacrifice? I flinched at his tone. He'd never shouted at me like that before. The silence after echoed louder than his words. He saw the fear on my face and softened. I'm sorry, he said quickly. I didn't mean to yell. I'm under a lot of pressure. You know how much I love you. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I wanted to believe him, but something inside me broke that morning, a quiet, invisible snap I couldn't fix. 2 days passed. We barely spoke. He left early, came home late, moved through the house like a ghost. Every time I looked at him, I saw a man torn between guilt and greed. Then Friday arrived, the night of the dinner. At exactly 6, Ryan walked into the bedroom, already dressed in his navy suit. "You look beautiful," he said softly, though I hadn't even changed. "I'm not going," I said flatly. He exhaled sharply, sitting on the bed. "Emily, please. Just meet him. Just talk. You don't have to do anything you don't want to." I folded my arms. "You mean, not yet?" He didn't answer. Instead, he opened a small jewelry box from his pocket. Inside was a diamond necklace, delicate, expensive. "I got this for you," he said, holding it up. "You deserve to look like a woman who belongs in that room." I stared at it, disgusted. "So now you're dressing me for the sacrifice?" He slammed the box shut. "You're being cruel." "No, Ryan. I'm being awake. For the first time, I'm seeing you without love's filter." He stood abruptly, his jaw tight. "I'm leaving in 10 minutes. If you love me, you'll come." When the door shut behind him, the apartment felt like a vacuum, silent, heavy, accusing. I sank to the floor, crying into my hands, asking God how love could rot this fast. I didn't plan to go. But as minutes turned to hours, I kept picturing Ryan's face, tired, desperate, begging. Some part of me still wanted to save him, even if he no longer deserved it. At 8:45 p.m., I put on a black dress, simple, not seductive, and drove to the hotel address he'd texted earlier. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like a drum in my chest. The Westbridge Hotel shimmered under the city lights, elegant and expensive. I parked, sat in the car for a full minute, and whispered to myself, "You're not doing this for him. You're doing this to end it." Inside the lobby, everything smelled of money, perfume, polished marble, and quiet lies. I saw Mr. Wallace near the bar, a glass of whiskey in hand, his smile wide and confident. "Mrs. Carter," he greeted, looking me up and down. "Ryan said you might come. You're even lovelier than I remember." I forced a polite smile. "Mr. Wallace." He gestured toward the elevator. "Let's talk somewhere more private." I ordered dinner upstairs. Room service is discreet. My pulse quickened. "Upstairs." He leaned closer. "Just a conversation. Don't be nervous." I nodded slowly, pretending to play along. But my phone was already recording inside my clutch purse. As we entered the suite, I felt the air thicken. The table was set for 2, candles flickering, music low. Everything about the scene screamed premeditated. "Ryan is lucky," Wallace said, pouring wine. "Most wives wouldn't be this, understanding." I took the glass but didn't drink. "Understanding?" I repeated. He smiled. "You know how things work, Emily. Ryan's a good man, but good men don't always get ahead. Sometimes they need a little help from women who know how to play the game." I set the glass down, my hands trembling from anger, not fear. "So this is the game," I said quietly. "Trading bodies for promotions." He laughed. "Oh, don't make it sound ugly. Think of it as partnership. You help him, I help you. Everyone wins." I took a deep breath, stepped closer, and looked him straight in the eye. "You know, I used to think men like you only existed in stories, the kind who buy loyalty and call it favor. But I'm glad I came tonight." He raised an eyebrow. "Are you?" "Yes," I said, voice steady now. "Because tonight, I get to record exactly what kind of man runs this company." His smile vanished. "What?" I pulled my phone from my purse and held up the screen, the red recording light flashing. "You've been talking for 8 minutes, Mr. Wallace." And I made sure every word was clear. He went pale. "You don't know what you're doing." "Oh, I do," I said, backing toward the door. "You wanted a favor. Here it is, I just saved you from destroying another man's wife." And with that, I walked out. My knees almost gave way in the elevator, but my spirit felt strangely light, like something sacred had just been restored inside me. As I stepped into the cold night air, I knew this wasn't over. Ryan would have to face what he'd done, not just to me, but to himself. Because sometimes, the most painful truth a man can face is seeing the woman he tried to sacrifice rise higher than his ambition. I drove home in silence, the night air slicing through my open window as if trying to cool the fire inside me. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel, not from fear, but from something sharper, betrayal's aftertaste. The city lights blurred through my tears, but I refused to cry too long. Tonight, I had done something Ryan never expected. I'd stood up for myself. When I pulled into our apartment parking lot, Ryan's car was already there. He must have left the dinner early, probably expecting to find me humiliated, guilty, or worse. Instead, I walked in with my head high, the recording still saved on my phone. He was pacing the living room when I opened the door. "Emily," he said, rushing toward me. "Oh, thank God, you came home." I was worried. I raised a hand to stop him. "Don't." He froze mid-step. Listen, I know it must have been awkward, but..." "It wasn't awkward," I said coldly. "It was disgusting. Your boss tried to buy me like a corporate asset." Ryan's face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" I recorded everything. I pulled my phone out and held it up. Every word. Every sick sentence that man said. He stared at the phone as if it were a live grenade. You recorded him?" "Yes," I said. "Because I wanted proof, not of him, but of you. Proof of how far you were willing to go for success." He sank onto the couch, rubbing his forehead. "Emily, you don't understand." "No, Ryan," I snapped, my voice cracking. "You don't understand. I was willing to lose sleep, lose comfort, lose everything to support you. But you asked me to lose myself. How do you even say something like that to someone you claim to love?" He looked up, eyes glistening. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought it was the only way." "Then you thought wrong," I said. "Because love that asks for compromise of the soul isn't love, it's corruption." He stood, reaching for me, but I stepped back. The distance between us felt wider than the entire room. "Please," he whispered, his voice trembling now. I was desperate. "Wallace said things, hinted." I felt trapped. "I didn't think you'd actually go." I laughed bitterly. "You didn't think I'd go? Ryan, you drove me there." He swallowed hard. Did you sleep with him?" The question cut like a blade. "You have no right to ask that," I said. "You lost that privilege the moment you offered me up." He turned away, his shoulders shaking. "I just wanted to make life easier for us." "Then you should have worked harder, not offered your wife as a business transaction." We stood there in silence, the ticking clock filling the air like a heartbeat. I could see him breaking, the weight of what he'd done sinking in, but I couldn't comfort him. Not this time. That night, I slept in the guest room. I could hear him crying quietly in the dark, the same man who once promised to protect me from the world, now the reason I needed protection. Over the next few days, the apartment felt like a graveyard. He barely spoke. I moved like a shadow, avoiding his gaze. The tension was thick, heavy, suffocating. On the third morning, as I packed my bag for work, Ryan appeared in the doorway, unshaven and hollow-eyed. "Emily," he said softly, "I need to tell you something." I didn't stop packing. "Go ahead." "Wallace called me," he said, voice low. "He knows about the recording. He said he'll ruin me if you release it. He's already started spreading rumors that I pushed you into it, that I'm unstable." I turned slowly. "Is he wrong?" Ryan's jaw clenched. "You don't understand what he can do. He can destroy my career." I stepped closer, my tone cold. "He can destroy your career, Ryan. But you destroyed your marriage." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "So that's it? You're just going to walk away?" "Yes," I said firmly. "Because the man I married doesn't exist anymore. I buried him the night you asked me to meet your boss." He followed me to the door, his voice desperate now. "Please, Emily, don't let this end like this. We can fix it. We can move past it." I turned to face him. His eyes were red, his hands shaking. And for a brief second, I saw the boy I once loved, scared, broken, human. "I forgive you, Ryan," I said quietly. "But forgiveness doesn't always mean returning." He looked confused. What does that mean? It means I can release you from my anger, I said, but I can't stay with a man who sold me out for success. With that, I left. I drove aimlessly through the city, the skyline blurred by tears. Atlanta felt colder than ever. I parked near Piedmont Park and sat there for an hour, staring at people jogging, laughing, holding hands, lives untouched by betrayal. I envied them, but I also pitied them, because I once thought love guaranteed safety too. Over the following week, I stayed with my friend Lisa, who listened as I poured out the story between sobs and long silences. She said something that stuck with me. You didn't just survive a betrayal, Emily, you escaped a cage. Her words hit me like sunlight through storm clouds. Maybe she was right. Maybe losing Ryan wasn't the end, maybe it was the beginning of seeing my worth again. But even as I tried to rebuild my strength, the guilt wouldn't leave. Not because of what I did, but because part of me still loved him, and love doesn't disappear just because respect does. One evening, Ryan called. His voice was hollow. Wallace fired me, he said. He made sure no one else will hire me. I'm done, Emily. Everything's falling apart. For a long time, I said nothing. Then quietly, I answered, maybe this is what it takes to learn who you really are. He started to cry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know, I said. But sorry can't rebuild what you burned. I hung up and sat in silence, the phone heavy in my hand. For the first time, I realized I didn't feel anger anymore. Just release. That night, I prayed. Not for Ryan's success, not for his downfall, but for my own healing. Because when tears welled up again, not just for what had happened to me, but for all the women who hadn't had a choice. I turned off the TV and sat in silence, hands trembling. Somehow, justice was unfolding not by my hands, but through truth finding its own way out. The next day, my phone rang again. This time, it was Wallace's wife. I hesitated before answering. Mrs. Carter, she said, her voice steady but full of pain. I just wanted to say, thank you. I saw the footage. I heard your voice. You didn't let him touch you. You walked out. You reminded me of who I used to be before I started forgiving the unforgivable. I swallowed hard. I'm sorry you had to see that. Don't be, she said. Sometimes pain is the only mirror that shows us truth. When she hung up, I sat staring at the wall for a long time. Her words replayed in my mind. Pain as a mirror. Maybe that was exactly what this season of my life was, a reflection of what happens when love, ambition, and self-worth collide. By the weekend, the story had exploded. Wallace resigned. The company issued a public apology. And Ryan became an unexpected whistleblower hero. Reporters wanted interviews, podcasts wanted his voice. People who once looked down on him were now calling him brave. But fame built on falsehood is a fragile crown. One evening, I ran into him outside a coffee shop. He looked thinner, older, with guilt written all over his face. Emily, he said softly, can we talk? I nodded. We sat inside, two strangers sharing a table where love used to live. I don't deserve the credit I'm getting, he admitted. They think I exposed Wallace out of conscience. But it wasn't courage, it was you. You're the one who stood up that night. You're the one who said no. I looked at him, eyes steady. Then why don't you tell them the truth? He stared into his cup. Because I'm scared. Of what? Of losing what little respect I have left. There it was again, fear. The same fear that had made him offer me to his boss. The same fear that had turned love into betrayal. I sighed. Ryan, if your respect depends on a lie, then it's not respect. It's performance. He looked up, eyes glistening. You're right. I've been living for other people's approval my whole life. I leaned forward. Then maybe it's time to stop. For a while, we just sat there, listening to the low hum of the cafe. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. This is my resignation letter. I'm walking away from the job, from the lies, from Wallace's shadow. I'm starting over. Maybe I'll even get therapy. I took the envelope, feeling the weight of the moment. That's good, Ryan. Healing starts with honesty. He smiled faintly. And you? What will you do now? I looked out the window. The sky was fading into sunset, colors bleeding into gold. I'm not sure, I said softly. But for the first time in a long while, I'm not afraid to be alone. He nodded, his lips trembling. I miss you, Emily. I smiled sadly. I miss who we used to be. But that version of us doesn't exist anymore. When I left the cafe, the air felt different, lighter. The kind of light that comes after a storm. That night, I went home and stood in front of the mirror, the same one that had witnessed my tears and sleepless nights. For the first time, I didn't see a broken woman. I saw a survivor, someone who had walked through fire and come out whole. I thought about Ryan, about Wallace, about every woman who had ever been made to choose between love and dignity. And I whispered to my reflection, never again. Because strength isn't about what we endure, it's about what we refuse to endure twice. As I turned off the light, my heart was still tender, but there was peace in the silence. Pain had been my teacher, truth my companion, and self-respect my redemption. And though the scars remained, they no longer felt like wounds. They felt like reminders. That love built on lies will always collapse, but self-worth, once rediscovered, never fades. 6 months had passed since that night at the cafe, 6 months since I walked away from the ashes of my marriage and into a life I didn't recognize. At first, every morning felt hollow. I'd wake up and instinctively reach for Ryan's side of the bed, only to find it cold, empty, and silent. Grief, I learned, isn't just about losing someone you love, it's also about losing who you were when you loved them. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to notice small changes. The silence that once haunted me became comforting. The loneliness that used to choke me slowly turned into solitude, a kind of peace I hadn't known before. I started therapy, reluctantly at first. My therapist, a gentle woman named Dr. Miller, asked me one question that changed everything. Emily, when was the last time you chose yourself? I sat there staring at her, unable to answer. My entire adult life had been about someone else, about Ryan's dreams, Ryan's stress, Ryan's success. Somewhere along the line, I'd stopped being a person and had become a supporting character in someone else's story. That realization hurt more than the betrayal itself. So, I began rebuilding, slowly, deliberately. I went back to painting, something I'd loved before marriage. I spent evenings sketching in the park, sometimes losing track of time as the city lights came on. I got a part-time job at a local art studio, helping children discover colors and imagination. Their laughter healed me in ways therapy couldn't. One afternoon, after class, a little girl named Chloe tugged at my sleeve. Miss Emily, she said, holding up her paintbrush, my mom says when we make a mistake, we can turn it into something beautiful. Is that true? I smiled, feeling tears sting my eyes. Yes, sweetheart. Sometimes, that's the only way we heal, by turning our mistakes into art. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Chloe's words. Maybe that's what my life had become, a canvas of mistakes and lessons, messy but meaningful. Then, one Sunday morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to church. I sat quietly in the back pew, unsure if I belonged there anymore. But as the choir sang about grace and new beginnings, something inside me broke open. The pastor said, God's forgiveness isn't for the perfect. It's for the ones who thought they ruined everything, yet still showed up. I wept silently. Because that was me, the woman who thought she had ruined love, faith, and trust, yet somehow was still standing. After the service, as people filed out, I stayed behind. A man about my age approached me. He was holding a Bible and a gentle smile. I've seen you here the last 2 Sundays, he said softly. I'm Daniel. I smiled nervously. Emily. We talked about faith, about life, about starting over. He wasn't charming or perfect. He was kind, grounded, and real. He didn't ask about my past, and I didn't offer it. For the first time in years, a conversation felt easy, uncalculated, human. Over the next few weeks, Daniel became a quiet presence in my life. We'd meet for coffee after service, share stories about bad jobs, lost dreams, and small victories. He wasn't a replacement for Ryan, he was a reminder that love doesn't have to hurt to feel real. But even as my heart began to thaw, I promised myself one thing: I would never lose me again for anyone. Meanwhile, news of Ryan reached me through mutual friends. He'd moved to Chicago, working for a non-profit that helped men recover from career burnout. Apparently, he was in therapy too. Hearing that didn't reopen wounds, it gave me peace. Maybe we had both found redemption in our own ways. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in gold, Daniel texted me, "Some people say healing is forgetting. I think it's remembering without pain." I smiled, tears pooling in my eyes. He was right. Healing isn't pretending the past never happened, it's learning to live with the memory without letting it define you. I picked up my paintbrush and began painting the sunset, bold strokes of orange, pink, and purple blending into one another. Every line felt like a prayer, every color a reminder that beauty can come from brokenness. As I painted, I whispered to myself, "I choose me." For the first time in a long while, that didn't sound selfish, it sounded sacred. Weeks later, I submitted one of my paintings, a woman standing before a burning skyline with her heart glowing like sunrise, to a local art exhibit. I titled it "The Night I Remembered My Worth." It won second place. As I stood there, surrounded by people admiring my work, I felt something rise inside me, not pride, but gratitude. For the pain, the lessons, the loss, and the rebirth. Later that night, as I drove home under the soft hum of city lights, I realized something profound. Love can be found again. But self-worth, once reclaimed, is the rarest treasure of all. I parked, turned off the engine, and sat in the quiet glow of the dashboard. My phone buzzed, a message from Ryan. "Emily, I saw your art online. It's beautiful. I'm proud of you. I'm sorry again, truly." I stared at the screen for a while, then replied, "Thank you, Ryan. I hope you find your peace too." Then I set the phone down, exhaled deeply, and whispered into the night. "I already have." The city outside seemed to breathe with me, alive, restless, hopeful. I wasn't the same woman who had once been asked to trade dignity for love. I was the woman who walked away, who faced the fire, and came out radiant. Sometimes, redemption doesn't come wrapped in grand gestures or second chances. Sometimes, it comes quietly, through small choices that say, "I matter too." And that's how my story began again. Not with a man, not with a proposal, but with a promise. To never forget the woman I became when I chose to love myself first. Sometimes life doesn't break us to destroy us, it breaks us to rebuild what we forgot was sacred. I once believed love meant sacrifice, that being a good wife meant staying silent when my heart was screaming. But I learned that love without respect is just bondage disguised as devotion. Ryan's betrayal wasn't the end of my story, it was the awakening of it. Because forgiveness isn't about letting someone back in, it's about letting pain walk out. I forgave him not because he deserved peace, but because I did. Today, when I look back, I don't see failure, I see freedom. I see a woman who lost everything she thought she needed, only to find everything she truly was. And if my story ever reaches another broken soul wondering if they'll survive betrayal, I hope they know this. You will. Because no matter how dark the night feels, healing always comes with the morning light. In the end, I learned that love is not proven by how much you endure, but by how bravely you choose yourself when no one else does.